Hi, everybody. I hope you're having a happy July and you're staying safe in our crazy world. Today, we're going to talk about retaining women in technology, which, even if you're working remotely, you have to take into consideration. So, we'll be going over the key factors and also talking about elements that have to do with remote work and how it affects retention. If you want to have a comment or a question, just press the join the chat button, and the slides are there for you to enjoy and take away. So let's get started. We want to just revisit for a minute the problem that we've been working on for the last 8 years. In the end, the facts are that even though we've spent over 40 years trying to get women in tech through a whole variety of programs, when they hit that organization, 50% of the women leave the field early career. So this is not going to be solved by pipeline issues, but please keep working on that, okay? We have to figure out how to keep women from marching out of our organizations, and to keep in mind that this kind of attrition costs companies $16 billion a year. So even though we're working remotely and we're completely overwhelmed with everything in this crazy world, let's think about the best way to manage our people, and in this case, women in technology organizations. Now, this is why we started the Women in Tech Retention Project and why I started WITops, which is dedicated to understanding the issues of retention and creating very practical solutions. Note that all of the work that we have done, creating the framework with deep dive research to understand what is going on in the lives of women, which I'll talk about today, then validating that with our at-work experience measure with over 900 more people, and then looking at what research we should do following that to identify the critical intervention points and create practical, tested, iterated solutions that we will be giving to you. So please go out to the WITops website and take a look. And if you want to help us out and be a volunteer, send me mail. All right, now we're going to talk today about the at-work experience framework, and we're also going to talk about how do we think about that factor in light of retention, okay? So we'll be talking about, these are the 6 key factors that matter when we ask women, not why did you leave? Because that's not the way we did the research. When we do an investigation about why women stay, because if we can understand why women stay, we can make sure we have those conditions. And then we looked at, and we did find that when women leave or are thinking about leaving, they leave because they don't have these things. So we're going to go over the tight, cohesive team, the stimulating the work, managing by push and support. Do we have local role models and non-judgmental flexibility when it comes to homework balance? And what about the women's own personal power? Okay, so let's think about that. When we did our research, we found that 39, depending on which survey we were doing, to 49% of the women were thinking of leaving their jobs. And when we took a look at their measures on the factors, lo and behold, we find that if women are thinking of leaving their job, they score lower across the board on nearly every factor. And we'll talk about why one is missing. So, and you will see that our first factor, which is one of the most important, if you are on a tight, cohesive team, you are less likely to be thinking of leaving your job. So we are challenged now by being remote, and let's figure out what's really going on. So let's start with that tight, cohesive team. What are we really talking about? When we think about a tight, cohesive team, what we mean is that, yes, we have social relationships, and social relationships matter because we don't want to feel alone on the team, and we'll talk more about that. But that is not what women are talking about. They're talking about a psychological sense of team, the feeling that they belong to the team, that identify with the team members and the team mission, that in that team, there's a dynamism, One woman said, I never had such a fabulous team as when we were all working on this really important, innovative product for the president. Another talked about her product managers and developers and designers all working together, interrupting each other, raising issues, right? Asking for each other's opinions. When women can lead and follow, when women feel they are heard, when they are asked for their opinion, when everybody is focused on the problem, then they have that sense that we are up to something that matters. And what we find is that the experience of value comes directly from the issue of, is the team cohesive and do I feel membership? And if we take a look at the larger literature beyond our work, we find that team cohesion is at the absolute core of the feeling of belonging, but also it's at the core of innovative work and team performance. So there's nothing better you can be working on right now than the cohesion of your team and ensuring that every member of the team feels that sense of belonging and identification. Now, more interestingly, if we step back for a moment and realize that numbers matter, when there's only one woman on the team, when the woman goes into the room, she might be thinking, am I the token woman? She doesn't see anyone who's like her, yeah? And she may be worrying about her sense of belonging when she's entering this team, yes? And so if she's worrying about that, her mind is not completely 100% on everything she's doing because there's self, watching the self, watching other people's responses. But when there's more than one woman on the team, the women identify more closely with the team, their work is better, but, and this is the tricky, really cool thing, the overall work of the team is better because the cohesion of the team is better and the team performance and innovation is better. And the findings in other research is that this is the same for other underrepresented populations that are in our field. So if we take a look at the numbers, we do much better to form teams where there are multiple women on the team so that at least in the identity characteristic of gender, we are not, if you would, alone. So this sense of belonging is really pretty pervasive, okay? If we think about what we're saying then, is when women are in a minority, they feel less connected, they worry about acceptance. I'm not saying every woman, I'm saying in general. But when we look at remote teams, just by being remote, gender aside, they already have less cohesion because they're remote, because they're not together, because they're not bumping into each other. And so the remote work is undermining daily collaboration, that intense interaction. The cohesion means we depend on each other, we talk to each other, we solve problems together. Excuse me. So that is getting in the way when we are in a remote setting. On the other hand, what the research tells us is if everybody has something, whether that's a team song or a team mascot or a team t-shirt or a team avatar, when there is a strong identification with the team, that increases cohesion and also reduces stereotyping, which is kind of wild, right? All right, so what can we be doing? Why do social connections help? Because when we first meet people, we kind of bounce off gender or ethnicity or these external identity characteristics, body type, things like this. But when we learn the breadth of a person's life, what are they interested in? Even if they aren't like me in that initial identification, they are maybe like me, as one of the women talked to me about, because she could connect and not feel alone on a daily basis, even though she was remote, because the other guys in the place she worked were gamers. She was a gamer. They could bond on gaming. Today, I've heard product managers connecting better with other members of the team because they all have small children. They can bond on dealing with small children. We can find, if we know each other's hobbies and activities, other ways to connect with each other, and that helps our sense of belonging and the feeling that we're just socially connected. We're not different from everybody else. Microsoft have been tracking this. If you've been looking at their blog, they're finding that people are having shorter meetings and they're having much more IM, instant message. That will help. You know, they naturally are realizing that this dropping in has to happen more. We need to duplicate that kind of, if you would, coffee, not just the group coffee in the morning, which is like, hey, hi, but that one-on-one dynamic interaction. How can we make that happen more? Well, we can assign work to more than one person and keep moving it around so everyone keeps getting to know the reality of what that person is like. So we want to rotate who we're doing work on. We also know, and you've heard me, if you've been listening to these things, talk about this over and over, highly successful, innovative teams have clear mission, clear goals, clear processes, clear roles, clear deliverables, and they know how they're going to work with each other. The more we can introduce structure, the more we have structured processes, the better it is for women in tech and the better it is for remote work. So an example is the critique process. We are a maker organization or we are a maker industry. And that means that we're going to be getting feedback from each other, from management, from customers. I hope a lot from customers. And we need to know how to run critique sessions and how to deal with being criticized, because our research shows that women are not, you know, they lose self-esteem when they're criticized. And everybody does. I've had people endlessly, men, women, talk about how they can't take getting feedback that their work isn't perfect. Well, that's the nature of our industry. So this is the reason that we developed our critique process. Go check it out. Another thing you're going to hear me talk a lot about is the idea of round robin. We can get in the way of bias if we simply march around the team and make sure that people are participating, or you'll see, we'll talk about assignment. So round robin is a big intervention approach. And another thing that you can think about is the idea of doing individual evaluations, whether that's of time or giving feedback. Let people say what they feel individually before gathering it into a group. That makes sure that they actually speak. And if they feel they're not sure if they belong or they're more underrepresented, they're less likely to do that, okay? So our key goal here is to maintain a tight, cohesive team. Ready for number 2? So bias plays again. 1, women need challenging, stimulating, not boring work just like men. They don't need, you'll see it in the middle, to do work that's on social issues. They need to be learning. They need to have challenging problems. They need the same kind of bleeding edge challenges that men do. One woman coder talked about how super cool it was to do coding and even debugging because it was like solving a puzzle, solving a problem. Another said, I knew when I walked into this company, and she's now a director at this point, when I walked in this company, they were bleeding edge technology. I wanted to be involved in that bleeding edge technology, and I knew I'd have to handle the culture, right? What we're talking about here is that women want the same kind of technical challenges that men do. And if they're bored, they walk. If they're bored, if they don't get the stimulating work, they're more likely to be thinking of leaving. It's important to know, though, that the work assignment comes against, unfortunately, our underlying bias. 1, the technology industry is seen as masculine to start out with, which means women already have a step down, yes? Okay. And 2, as a result of that, even women, when we take a look at our academic research, respond with the feeling that women's work might not be as competent as men's. The point here is that when we think about work assignment, those biases are going to come into play. So it's important for us to understand women need not be bored. That is something to be taking a look at. So what should we be thinking about? Women may feel pressure to be interested in socially relevant work, but that is not what they're looking for. And the important thing to remember about remote is that by reducing cues, just like I can't be on the stage with you today, which I would dearly love, okay? Video even reduces cues, and when cues are reduced, we fall back on our biases and on our underlying assumptions, especially with project assignment. So we have to be more cautious. More importantly, we find in the research that women are more likely to do work that is not career advancing. And they're more likely to be asked to do what we would call team housework, like getting the coffee, taking the minutes, planning a social outing, etc. Now, what's interesting about being remote is, well, you have to get your own coffee, right? So the housework is a little bit more equitably distributed, and maybe we're learning some better habits. So if we're learning some new habits, how about keeping them? And here it comes again, round robin the grunt work. One of my favorite descriptions was somebody who was talking about her amazing manager, and instead of giving a whole bunch of people bugs to do, everybody, they had a bug fest. And when we're remote, we can have a bug fest or a design fest or something, if we're all looking for the little usability nits, whatever it is, that we're gonna all do together. It creates team cohesion, yes, and it makes sure that everybody does the grunt work. What else? Find out if the women are bored. Find out if anybody is bored. No one wants to be on a boring project all along, right? In your one-on-ones manager, you have to say, hey, tell me about the exciting work that you've been doing. Or, hey, pay attention to those nonverbals. Maybe they're not really excited about the work, but they're being a good citizen. I'm a good citizen. But in the end, do we really promote if all you are is a good citizen? Women have complained, hey, I work hard. Why am I not promoted? There's more going on there. What else? Assign the work. Deliberately don't ask for volunteers, because volunteers pick their buddies. And when they pick their buddies, then they don't get to know the skills of the other people, and they aren't necessarily going to get those interesting projects. So you want to break up cliques. You want to make sure that people are connecting, and you want to make sure that the work is equitable. And in the end, challenge your biases. If you're thinking this woman in tech might not be the right fit for this particular project, ask yourself, are you sure? Why do you think that? List her skills, list her successes. Ask yourself, is this a growth opportunity that you could support? And in the end, we have to do it. We have to look in the mirror and say, look, we're done with this stuff. Really? We're done with this stuff, which is why I like round robin. And the last piece I want you to just keep in mind is, too often we think we have this idea of employee directed career. I'm sorry. New hires don't really know all the time, hardly ever, what they want next. What is the appropriate challenge? You need to work with them in order to make sure they're increasingly challenged, because their biggest worry is, are they meeting expectations that you were, right to hire them? So be thinking about it. Don't let folks get bored or distribute the boredom and the dumb stuff. Next one. Okay, this one's a little hard. Why is it hard? It's hard because I don't like it. I don't like it. Women I've showed it to, they tell me, oh, they don't like it. And then I say, but was it right? And they go, yeah. Okay. The push and support. We may not like it, but women are more reluctant to take on a challenge. They're reluctant. They self-doubt. They might not know if they really have all the skills. They look at a job application, it has 10 skills. They don't have all 10, they don't apply. And they complain. Men look at the job with 10 skills, they have 3, they apply. They feel that the men are pushing themselves forward. And the women, they're not sure. So when parents, professors, managers push women into a big challenge, they take it on. They take it on, as long as they have appropriate support to talk it over, to know that failure is going to be okay, to learn, as long as they have a feeling that they are not just thrown out to the whales, right? Or I guess I should have said the sharks. All right, so how does the push look? One woman who's now a manager mentioned to her husband that she wanted to be a manager. He was in the same company. When he was aggressively looking for another job for himself, he found one for her. He said, here, you should apply. She's like, oh, I don't know. If I have this, yes, you are, you're good. He's pushing her. He's making her apply, but he's simultaneously, and this is in a trusted relationship, you can do it, push, he's simultaneously sitting with her, answering the questions, strategizing. One woman talked about how she had the scary professor and she had the daddy-like professor. And the scary professor would give her a hard problem, and if she was like whiny or didn't want to do it, he would roll his eyes and he was like, you can do it, go. And the supportive daddy professor was always there for her to talk things over with. We have seen it over and over, from parents to professors to managers. If you push, they will go. On the other hand, if you push without support, they may leave the field, as happened with one of the women that we talked to who had a fabulous coding background, and she was thrown into learning an entirely new set of information. And her manager was like, hey, you come from a great school, you're smart, you can do it. And she'd go away and she wasn't sure and she had no one to talk to. And she was early career. And so she'd do something. She'd come back to the manager and say, well, I don't know if this is right. He'd say, oh yeah, it's all good, keep going. And then she'd go back, but she still wouldn't know. She was wasting so much time with this emotional self-doubt. In the end, it happened in job after job with her until she didn't want to be there anymore, because she never felt that she was up to it with someone, up to something big. That's what it means to work on a team. Even if your team is just two people working on a research project in academia, up to something. So women will thrive under these kinds of situations. So what are we really saying? We're saying that at the core of this is a trusted relationship. You can't get pushed by somebody that you think is threatening to you, right? You need to believe that that person has your best interest at heart. So that means you have to build those trusted relationships. And it can be a member of your team, right? But it's best if it's inside of the company. All right, now what happens with remote? Well, in a remote context, of course, it might be harder to build those trusted relationships. But what is also true is that when you see yourself, you're a little more self-conscious, and you project your ideal self. And, I got to tell you, even in my career, Hugh pushed me, I was in a room with 10 architect developers, and he's like, Karen, we'll explain it, and gave me the marker. Well, what was I going to do? Stand up and cry? But I was in a trusted relationship. So I stood up and I did it. Our ideal self would not be somebody who was afraid of a challenge, but we might be undercutting, our own skills. We should list them, right? So we're thinking that if you're emulating your ideal self in a remote context, well, maybe the push will be easier. You'll say, yeah, I can do that. Well, what else can we do? As I said, you want to really foster trusted relationships with the manager and with other team members. Hey, here it is again. Round robin challenging work so everyone has a chance to shine. Move it around. Make sure, just don't think about it too much. Then everyone knows it's fair and they're going to get it. And partner. Let people partner with each other so there could be support. And now we're building our social connections as well, right? Think of partnering to do the job. And this is another big thing we saw with really excellent managers. They started to co-plan the next challenge and the career trajectory, particularly with early career and recent new hires, so that together you have these conversations about where you should go, the idea of promotion. Just like one manager said to one of the women we interviewed, I think it's time for you to be a manager. And it wasn't even a year she was there. Now, whether the woman chooses to go ahead and be a manager at that time or not. If the manager or a very senior person on the team says to you, I want you to do this hard thing, it's a straight up statement of value. And if it's a straight up statement of value, you feel better about yourself. You feel more connected to the team. You stop worrying. Yes? I think you should see some continuing themes here. All right, now let's take a look at these guys. We know who these guys are, right? RBG is in the hospital, and we dearly hope that she will be fine. Steve Jobs is no longer with us, and Ginny Rometty is the executive chair of IBM. These people are great role models, and we know that we need to see women on the court, women in tech. That's the whole point of Grace Hopper Conference, right? To know that we are invited to the party. And as I interviewed one African-American academic, she said, you know, I walk the halls of the university and I see all the leaders and none of them are African-American. It immediately communicates that they are not invited to the party. So having women on the walls and women to emulate, that is really important, but it is not enough to get women to want to go to the C-suite, to get women to succeed. It is not enough. And I know this because nobody ever, challenged me for having a lack of self-confidence. But when I actually met RBG, let me tell you, I was like, oh, it's RBG. Oh, what should I say? It was like not easy. So the important piece is to realize, I want us to go back to the word role model, okay? Where did that come from? Parents teach their kids how to behave by the behaviors that they do. That's what role modeling is all about. The behaviors you do teach what you should be doing. Now, if we take a look at the way kids learn, a kid who's 8 doesn't care what his father is doing so much, but he really cares about the 10 or 11-year-old boy. The 12-year-old girl cares a lot about the 15-year-old girl. And the new hire in tech, when they look up at that executive chairperson, doesn't go, oh yeah, I'm going to be an executive chair one day. They're looking at somebody with a few more years experience in their field to see how to behave. When they think, do I want to be a manager? They're looking to their manager and other managers to say, do I want to be a manager? And so when we think about what is necessary, what is more important, yes, have those way out models saying you're invited to the party, but on a daily basis for success, we need guides, buddies, partners, coaches. We need the people at the local level helping us learn how to be successful. But at the same time, they are modeling what life is like at that next level. And as one director, so she left that bleeding edge technology company when she was pregnant with her second kid because she had no life. She took a job at a more standard company that people went home. Yeah. But when she now looked at her next layer up, the executive VP, she's like, oh no, I don't want to do that job because they would have no home life. They travel too much. Or someone else said, I don't want that next level up job, a product manager. There's too much stress. I'd never see my kids. Over and over, we hear the story that they don't want to deal with politics, that they want to be sure that they can have their children in their life. In other words, every single one of us with more experience is a role model for anybody with less experience, but not just because we can help them learn the skill, but because our life communicates what life will be like if we take the next step. We need to look in the mirror if we want women to be taking the next step. So let's think about this. We have found 49% of women now in our research don't know what to do to be successful. That's why we created the team onboarding checklist. We know that remote reduces reaching out, bumping into, getting help, the way that you don't have to do it deliberately, like with a meeting message or an email or a real request or a phone number. Gee, that's scary, as my young new hires tell me. You can't just kind of hang and see them anymore. So we are going to have less likelihood of things just happening. It's an isolating world. But the interesting thing is, because we're remote now and our kids are hanging with us, the lives of more senior people are readily available, communicating a richer kind of overall view of their job. So it could be interesting to see what might be happening. So what's the solution here? Even now you can do this. Build in guides, partners, coaches into the work. Again, set up one-on-ones with people in the same field for your people so that they can get to know them, not just the people that they happen to work with, but they might find career guides in adjacent organizations. Foster these senior junior experiences, co-assign, let them work in pairs. Then we will start to learn about each other, but learn the job and gain new skills, gain confidence. Do a lot of the drop-in by messaging, especially for the early career folks. They're not going to come and ask. They're not going to come and ask. You have to ask what they want to ask. Yeah? What's the other thing here? What about how our lives look for promotion? Learn, because we just learned it. We can flex for family. Okay, maybe things are a little bit later, but family is a big challenge right now. We're having to take care of our family at the same time. Think about yourself. Are you a good model? Are you inviting women into the field? Because the life that managers are living looks appealing. As one woman who decided to become a manager told me, when she went to a conference and she saw a whole panel of women managers with small children like her, she decided she could do it. That's what helped her see local, same identity characteristics. I can do it too. That's what counts. Yeah. And look, we're learning. People are managing projects. People are collaborating. People are visioning new directions, and they're doing it remotely, which is reducing travel. Do we have to do everything we've already done? So, and last, go check out team onboarding. That's going to really be helpful, and it'll help you establish all of these kinds of relationships that you really need. So what about family issues? I've said this before. It's always worth repeating. This is the only factor that is not associated with thinking of leaving the job. Why? Because no matter the industry, doctor, lawyer, iBanker, engineering, all of us who work too many hours, who are in very challenging jobs, have the same family work issues. We've been trying family work alternatives. HP had job sharing 40 years ago, 35 years ago, okay? The Netherlands and all around, we've got all these kinds of things. We all have this, family leave policy. That's all well and good. But, I hate to tell you, once you have a baby, even if you give a lot of time, those kids are still there, as you're finding out right now. So the reason that it's not predictive of why people leave is because it's not the solution. It's the same across every industry. We all have to get our act together. But what have we learned? What have we learned? We've learned that when women feel like their team allows it, when women feel that their team flexes to their needs, then they're more confident that they can balance their kids and their work. Instead, they're reporting things like feeling like people are judging them if they're late because the kid was sick, or if they had to leave early because of something going on at school, that someone's clocking them, someone's watching them. We don't live in that world anymore, do we? We don't have to live in that world. But if you're worried about acceptance, and if you're the only one on the team, and if you're worried that your work is not accepted, right? If your work is challenged, then when you try to take care of your family, it undercuts your feeling that you're doing a good job even more. So the family issue may not be predictive. It's only because we're not doing a good job. And when women in our research told us, and this is going back to team cohesion, right? That when they're a part of the team and the team flexes to them, guess what? They feel better about the team. They feel better about the work. They can focus. So what are we saying? We can't be calling childcare a family support issue. It just reinforces gender stereotypes. It's all of our issues. We can't, fathers should worry as much about sneaking off to take care of their kids. I know my husband, he was the first line person for the school to call. Men, step up, do the job, and we'll start to get rid of some of this stuff. But now with the pandemic, everyone's home. Everyone has to manage their young kids. We have to find new ways to exercise, be with our families. We are at a point that we could take advantage of, right? I mean, I know of one family, a number of families where both spouses are working and their companies are supportive, where one of them takes, 7 to 1 and the other one takes 1 to 6, and otherwise they're taking care of their kids. We are working out how to get the work done if we are all flexible. We may not like it. I'm not saying we should keep this forever, okay? But let's learn from this and build in non-judgmental flexibility. So you've already got babies in meetings and nothing collapsed. You're already doing less travel and nothing horrible happened. You've already dragged out some delivery dates, right? To accommodate at-home demands. At least I hope you have. Well, maybe the company won't go under. Maybe you can do this when we come back to be working face-to-face. We are already pairing people up to do work, and they may say, hey, it's better for me to work off hours. It's better for me to work these hours in order to accommodate family, right? Pair people with similar home situations together and they'll work it out. Or add staff. I know you may not want to add staff, but it's a solution, okay? Why not let the team figure it out? Bring them together in a little workshop and say, what can we do? What can we do to make it work for you? What's our greatest ideas? Do it anonymously. Use a Miro board. Throw your ideas in there and then sort them and see what you come up with. And this I've seen that really bothers me. Companies may have a policy that it's okay for women to ask to go part-time. Okay, it's okay for anyone who asks to go part-time. But if we're letting our women go part-time so their husband can work full-time, what are we doing? We need to partner and solve this together. So the last thing I'll leave you with this piece is, in our Valuing and Jerk project, respect for time and life communicates that you value me. Respecting my time, respecting my life commitments communicates that you value me. Okay, do we? Do we want them to stay? Or do we want to make it really, really hard? So if we think about these factors, we still have one more. If we think about these factors, they're all organizational. These are things that can be done within the organization. In the end, retention is an organizational process problem. We don't want to be blaming people. We don't want to, be the bias police and beat everybody up with maybe things were biased. We want to look at our processes. We want to change our processes, right? Because we already know, and I'll say this later again, but I might as well say it now. We've been doing bias workshops for 40 years. And even when we give the workshop to a segment of the company and then we look a few weeks later, nothing has changed. We have to start changing practices and not blaming people. The pandemic is providing us a new perspective. Let's see what we can learn from it. Let's see what we can take away that'll also help women in tech. Now, if we could go and magically change everything about our organizations, maybe we wouldn't have to worry about this last factor. But that's going to take some time, and it's already been 35, 40 years, okay? So the other thing that correlates a lot with whether we're thinking of leaving our job is our feeling of our personal power, managing our own self-doubt. 80% of women lose confidence when they're criticized. As I said, we're in a maker industry. If you're going to lose confidence every time you're criticized, it's a problem, right? It's a problem. And if you're already looking at yourself and wondering if you're good enough because it's a tech masculine world or you're the only woman, it's a problem. And I'm convinced, and literature has shown this in one way or another, that, women have a different issue than men. Middle school's like death for women because the kids are so judgmental about body type, about every behavior. We all come out scarred. We need years of therapy, and I sure hope you're laughing out there. So a lot of us end up with this little Dybbuk I talk about, this little demon. It sits on your shoulder, and it spends all its time going, you're not good enough for that job. I don't think you did a good job. I'm not sure you're going to be able to do this. Are you going to be able to do this? Probably not. You have this little thing talking in your ear for your life, telling you you're not good enough. Well, who can get any good work done when you don't feel that you have personal power, when you keep losing your personal power? Or you lose your personal power in ways that aren't very powerful, like somebody does something, you feel self-doubting, maybe you're angry, so now you start screaming. Well, that's about as unprofessional as you can get. Or you demand that they do things. I always say, if you're angry, if you feel like crying, go home. Talk to all your friends and support network, figure out the professional way to behave. Now come back and do something reasonable, right? It's not just those hot emails we can't be sending. Now, what happens now that we're face to face? Well, we've already got 49% of women feeling they're invisible. In a remote context, unless we are careful, that isn't going to help, right? That isn't going to help. We do know that when there is more than one woman on the team, women have a higher score on their personal power. Another reason, I don't care if you have a set of teams, and remember, when I say teams, I don't mean direct reports, although that's good too. But I mean, if you look at the people working together on a project, is there more than one woman on that team? Okay, so they're not walking into that room of men. Yes? When there's more than one woman on the team, we have a higher sense of personal power. We don't feel as alone, whether it's reasonable, it's not reasonable. This is what it's really like. So what? Let's make more teams with more women, even if it means we have a bunch of teams that are all men. Because in the end, we still find that those teams outperform. Keep that in mind. All right. Now, what happens in remote? Self-perception, because you're being your ideal self, as we talked about, reduces stereotyping. I mean, what are you going to do? Act like a jerk in front of everybody? Roll your eyes? You're going to sit and look at your phone while your face is there? So our jerk behavior diminishes a little. We hope so. We're doing a new survey on that. Please go out and help us. And because everyone has an equal square, it equalizes power, even when somebody is more powerful. And guess what? You can't do really jerky behavior. Like, look, I can't really get in your face. I just look stupid. I can't use my body in order to harass. So the point here is there's some good things about being in a remote context for the sense of self-confidence and personal power. On the other hand, we're looking at ourselves, and that could increase our self-criticism and judgment. Well, that isn't a good thing. Yeah? All right, so what are we going to do? We got to manage the interpersonal dynamics between people. And I'm just going to say it again, and I know it's getting boring, but structured process level the playing field. The more we know what the rules of engagement are, the more we know our processes and our roles, the more we know what a successful deliverable is, the more we feel like we know how to get the work done. It's better for women, it's better for remote, it's better for the team. So go check out our team onboarding checklist and look at the live stream on managing diverse teams. But also, let's have some fun. Let's make some conversations so we can have some honest conversations about things. Our career power board game lets you look at real cases from real women's lives and pick out the right answer to the quandary or brainstorm the right answer. You can go and play this game or just present a case at one of your meetings. I'm going to help you out because over the next few months, I'm going to be putting some cases out on LinkedIn and Twitter, and you can use it as social conversation in your coffees and see what everybody thinks. And then a few weeks later, I'll tell you what the answer is. Or have some fun. We're going to have some really, really cool posters coming on valuing and jerk behavior. Learn about value and jerk behavior and, toss it around. Think about it. Do some conversations. In the end, the most important thing for the feeling of personal power, what? A strong, cohesive team, getting work that is challenging because it says, I value you, getting the push because it says, I value you and you are not alone and you matter, having buddies, mentors, because you can get that work done. It means you are not invisible. In other words, my personal power is going to increase when I'm more hooked in. So bias workshops aren't going to work, restructuring the way we work, and now in a remote context, restructuring how we interact to make sure people are connected. And remember, I don't want to hear about imposter syndrome anymore. It's a stupid idea. You know where I learned from it? I learned from it from a male professor who thought the FBI was going to come down the hall and get him and say, you're an imposter, because he was early career and he was doing well. Every time I start something new, I think I can't do it. When I started in context, I wouldn't put CEO or president on the card. I wrote consultant because I hadn't grown into that role yet. Same thing happened when I started WITops. I'm like, what do I know about this? I don't know. So this is what I think. It's natural to feel like you don't know what you're doing when you don't know what you're doing. Imposter syndrome is the internal noise of taking on a challenge. Listen for it and go, oh, I know you. It means I'm doing something hard. I'm going to have to act like I'm the president, and eventually I'll feel like I'm the president. And then guess what? I'll get bored with that and I'll need something new, and then I'll again feel I don't know what I'm doing. So I don't want to hear about imposter syndrome. I want to hear about the challenges that you're going to be taking. So this is what we do at WITops. It's cultural change by design. We think remote work is just an opportunity. We use all the research we do. Please come help us in order to identify the key processes like team onboarding and the critique, to help learn, having some techniques to manage interpersonal behavior. We've got some new stuff coming out, and to do some sneak attacks like fun and games and little workshops, or just adding things on to a process like Agile. So please keep following us. And Nicola Marston, who's one of my great supporters and helps, not just a supporter, she's my key partner in all of this. She and I are writing our new book on retaining women in tech, and it's going to take a while because of remote work and COVID, but go get the introductory chapter, and please, we'll be sending some surveys to help. You can do community publishing with us. But this is our work, and this is our talk for today, and watch for the career power cases that are going to be coming, and otherwise we'll maybe have some more live streams in October or so, but go look at all the other ones that are out there, and I'm happy to take any questions if there are any, Derek.
Nope, no questions today.
All right, everybody, stay safe, and please send me mail if you have questions, you want to do the work, you want to try things out. Bye-bye.